Rose Garden, and welcome to this season's reading wrap-up. I'm Avalon Roselin, indie author, and your pumpkin spice enthusiast for the evening. I'm really enjoying these reading wrap-up videos. They give me a chance to share more details about the books I've read than my quick reviews without having to commit to the heftier editing of a full review. Also, these videos are spoiler-free, so you won't need to skip over any sections. My first read for fall was a supporter request, The False Prince by Jennifer A. Nielsen. Because this was a supporter request, it has a full review video that you can check out to hear my full thoughts, so I won't talk about it too much here. But suffice to say, I loved it. I was a little hesitant about the twist at the start of the third act, but it led to such iconic scenes that I ended up fully supporting it by the end. Sage is maybe one of my favorite protagonists ever, and I found myself frequently laughing at his snarky comments, whether I read them from the book or listened to them from the audiobook. This is also the first audiobook I've ever listened to, so that makes it stand out just a little bit more. Next up, I read Hymn of Memory by my friend S. Jean. I had already read and enjoyed The Devil in the Woods and picked up a few more of their books, all of which I intend to read as soon as I can. Hymn of Memory is definitely a very different reading experience than The Devil in the Woods, one that's much more melancholy and introspective. There is still external conflict and lovable characters getting into situations, but to me, the primary conflict, the one that drives everything else that happens in the book, is the way that Morgan, being a divine, has robbed him of his personhood. Technically, this happens to every divine to some extent, but most of them are chosen when they're middle-aged. Because Morgan was significantly younger and therefore had less time to establish his identity, the work of the divine in absorbing memories of lingering souls to free them is eroding his own memories and sense of self. Like, to the extent that he doesn't remember how many family members he had. That speaks to me in a way that is hard to describe. A lot of people I know grew up with parents who had wild stories about their college days or their 20s in general, and that this was their time to figure themselves out and make mistakes and have fun. And that's something a lot of people in my generation didn't get. And what was taken from Morgan, being thrust into a lifelong commitment at a very early age without his consent, because it's ordained by the gods. He can't choose to stop being a divine. So when he gets a chance, however fleeting and however bad of an idea it may be, to get to be a normal teen on a road trip with friends, of course he's going to take it, even if his divine duties find a way to follow him. I just really felt for Morgan, and the other characters were really fun and lovable too. Hymn of Memory won't be leaving my memory anytime soon, and I highly recommend it. Friend of the Damned by my friend Vincent Lore was my next read. It's a short story following Owen, who is a runner, a sort of supernatural sleuth in the prince's employ. It's hard to say too much about this short because it feels like just a taste of things to come, and I know Vincent has more runner Owen stories coming. That said, I think it accomplishes what it needs to in that I want to see more of this world and its recurring characters. I also found it a fascinating choice to write Friend of the Damned in second-person point of view, with the you being, as best as I can guess, the main villain of the series. I can't say very much about it without spoiling things because it is so short, so check it out for yourself. And if audiobooks are more your thing, I'm actually working with Vincent Lore to record the audiobook for Friend of the Damned, so that will hopefully be available soon. I would have read How to Sell a Haunted House by Grady Hendrix earlier if I could have afforded it new in hardcover. I've seen a lot more commentary on Hendrix's writing claiming that he's surface-level, tropey horror with no deeper message, but I couldn't disagree more. I think How to Sell a Haunted House perfectly encapsulates the complicated relationships that can form between families, and how keeping secrets ultimately harms those we most want to protect. I really liked the framing device around grief, and there are some truly unsettling moments throughout. I listened to the audiobook as well as reading my physical copy, so there was a moment while I was listening to the book during my drive home and arrived thinking that I had reached the end of the story, only to see how much of the book there was left. And I wasn't disappointed with that. Sure, the book could have wrapped up nicely at one point, but horror stories usually do turn the screw just a little more right when you think everything is settled, and I was definitely caught up in that trap this time. There were some parts of How to Sell a Haunted House that I didn't like, involving the scares trying to get a little too over the top, but overall, I think that this was a solid scary doll story. My mom loaned me her copy of In the Company of Witches by Aurelie Wallace while she worked on the sequel, which I kind of made her do by mentioning it in the TBR video. In any case, I think In the Company of Witches is a good cozy mystery. I don't think it's particularly surprising or remarkable in any way. It delivers on its premise, and if that's what you want to read, you won't be disappointed. I do love magical aunts, from Practical Magic to Sabrina the Teenage Witch, so I enjoyed Nora and Izzy the most as far as the characters go. Bryn's attitude did annoy me a little because I'm not a fan of the character with special powers who wants to be normal arc, but Bryn's certainly isn't the worst one I've ever seen, and I actually enjoyed that she had talking to ghost powers. I may not have read a lot of cozy mystery series, but typically I don't think that's an ability that protagonists usually have. Not much else to say other than, if you like magical cozy mysteries, this one will scratch that itch just fine. Naturally, I had to reread The Halloween Tree by Ray Bradbury during October, and I was able to do that in an afternoon because it's a really short book and I've read it before. I feel like there isn't much I have to say about this holiday classic. It's a must-read for me every October. The image of a tree full of jack-o'-lanterns is just so peak Halloween. I'm not the biggest fan of Bradbury since he can get pretty long-winded with his metaphors and descriptions, but when they're good, they're good. The Only Good Indians by Stephen Graham Jones has been hyped up to me so much on BookTube that I was at first a little worried it wouldn't live up to the reputation. But I needn't have worried. The Only Good Indians was legitimately terrifying, to the point that I had to stop listening to the audiobook on my drive to work because it was too dark out and I was getting scared. I saw a deer at the side of the road once while listening, and that was it. If you are at all interested in folk horror, you owe it to yourself to read The Only Good Indians. I only wish I'd waited until November to read it because the story is set the week before Thanksgiving, and this is what Thanksgiving horror should be, not evil killer turkeys. All of the characters are just so human and messy, and the shift in the second half actually caught me off guard. I can remember the exact moment when I realized that the story was about to take an unexpected turn, and things only got better and better from that point on, the pace going from fairly slow and building dread to an adrenaline rush of vengeance. I loved it, and I loved the touch of magical realism that this is all just happening. We finally got all the volumes of Bizenghast by M. Alice Legros. One teenage goal fulfilled. And honestly, I'd probably need a whole video to talk about this series. Not only the story and characters, but more than likely the whole Tokyo Pop publishing thing, because I can sense the executive meddling in the pacing of the finale. It might be interesting to look up interviews with the creator, or ask her some questions myself about just what happened and how she might do things now. What I can say about the story is that it is very much 2000s edginess in a way that soothes my soul. It's so nostalgic, and I love that. Edrir has my whole heart, and I'm so happy he got to cameo in Cinderella Boy. Nightbooks became one of my new favorite horror movies for younger audiences, so I was happy to get my hands on the original book by J.A. White and make some comparisons. I think the biggest difference between the two is why Alex was going to destroy his Nightbooks, and I think each of the reasons make sense and work for their medium. It would have been a little difficult to convey the complex emotions and reasoning that went into the book's version of the decision through a visual medium like film. Overall, the book and movie aren't too different, and I like both. I especially enjoy the stories that Alex writes, and the fact that they're transcribed in full. I always hate it when there's a story within a story, or when characters are putting on a play or something, and the audience doesn't actually get to see the play or hear the story. So thank you to J.A. White for not cutting out Alex's stories and instead giving them some room to shine. While I didn't manage to read both of the World War II focused books I had on my TBR for this season, I did finish Signs of Survival, a memoir of the Holocaust by Renee Hartman and Joshua M. Green. In the TBR video, I expressed concerns that the book would be entirely from Renee's perspective and not include the testimony of her deaf sister Herta. That worry was quickly put to rest once I started reading. The book is, for the most part, a transcription of the video testimonies provided by both sisters, and I hope that more will be transcribed this way to make them even more widely available. As an educator, and as someone with a history degree, I have seen firsthand the way that modern politicians are trying to whitewash history and, if not outright deny certain atrocities ever happened, downplay their severity or remove discussion of them from curriculum so fewer people can learn about them and potentially draw certain comparisons to current events. Books like this make the truth of historic events from the people who lived through them accessible to students. I will definitely be adding this book to my classroom library's growing collection of biographies. The last book I read and finished this fall was Carmilla by Sheridan Le Fanu. I've been meaning to read more classics, and this one was given to me by my husband, so we read it / listened to it together. And yep, it sure is a classic. The writing was something that I probably would have struggled with if I wasn't listening to the audiobook or reading it out loud. But it was worth it, because it was gay. The only thing I knew ahead of time going into this book was that it's a sapphic vampire romance, something that my copy actually advertises right on the cover, but I thought it was going to be sapphic in the roundabout implied way that so much older queer content is. And, nope. Carmilla and Laura are very in lesbians with each other. Of course, per the Times, this is portrayed as a bad thing and part of Carmilla's predatory nature toward Laura. But oh my gosh, they literally move in together the moment they meet. How did Sheridan Le Fanu know? Or have lesbians just always been this way? I'm not entirely sure I'd recommend Carmilla unless you're really into sapphic vampires and don't mind sentences that go on for paragraphs, but I am glad that I finally read it myself. And now I really just need a modern adaptation where instead of crashing her carriage outside of Laura's house, Carmilla crashes her U-Haul, because it really is that. And that is it for my fall reading wrap-up. There are more books that I started during November, but I'll include those in my winter TBR, which should be up sometime in early December. Also, I'm considering going back to an older idea I had and posting these TBR and wrap-up videos for the pagan holidays instead of seasonally, which would double the number of TBR and wrap-up videos. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, as well as any thoughts you have about the books that I read, so please leave a comment below to let me know, and keep growing until next time, Rose Garden.